in the way that I may not necessarily feel comfortable. And so this time I'm just going to fold. Eventually I may have to start reacting, but against people who lead out a lot, I do like playing passively and just forcing their bluffs to be a bit more expensive. And usually he's linked with weak hands, so I'm just going to actually be fairly aggressive raising and taking the initiative. I'm going to call here and maybe raise some turn cards. I'm going to probably raise this card. I have an open-ended, interesting. I'm going to actually cap. I'm going to get the last word on the river here. I think I'm not going to be good that often, but for the price, I don't mind. And now I'm just going to fold. Probably has some sort of end of the straight. But for the extra, with maybe the half equity on the turn, for the price of an extra bet and a half, I don't mind going that much bigger with my bluff when my opponent could be tilting, could be being really aggressive with the draw. I just really want to get the last word on the river. Here I'm just going to check behind and give up. He hasn't been that frisky, quote-unquote, peeling late. I think he has king high here, but I don't think he folds king high. So I'm just going to check behind and take my queen high to showdown. In this case, he has queen high. And king 8, I'm going to re-raise. And since he seems to be uncomfortable with the idea of loose re-raising, maybe what I'm actually going to do, I'm going to just keep the lead here because I'm out of position. Now I'm going to call down. The 9 is a very poor card for me. I'm going to call this one. I may actually fold for a river bet. That makes every single decent draw. Could be tilting. I don't feel super comfortable putting this call in, but because of the demeanor of my opponent, I don't mind putting that extra bet in and just seeing if he's just wigging out. Now that I really feel play-wise he's really wigging out, so his 3-betting range has been fairly tight. I'm still going to contest this pot. This improves. I'm not going to raise for value. I'm going to call this bet, and if he checks it 2 in the river, I'm going to value bet. I'm going to call. And not that his range has been super tight, but maybe a little bit tighter than most. And I'm going to put in a check raise here and see if I can actually just get him to give up on this particular flop. Now I'm going to fold, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to hope that maybe the thing you have to always remember too is if you're worried about your opponent picking off your bluffs, that means he's going to be putting in extra money the times that you have a made hand. It's very very seldom will your opponents get the right balance. They'll either be putting in too much money or not enough money. And so either your bluffs are going to show the greatest profit. So I'm just going to check, try and induce a bet. I'm not going to raise. It's a very small pot. There's no value in protecting. I'm going to call a second bet. And in this situation, I may even call a river bet, depending on what the action is. Just hoping that he might be encouraged to 3-barrel by the very dry texture on the turn. And so we do go to a chop on the river. And so this is a situation where he probably either has nothing, ace high, king high. I don't mind folding to the raise here. I think it's a very, it's not a bad bluff to make per se, but I don't think it's a bluff that he's necessarily making. I think he's going to bluff. He's just going to check raise the flop. So because I have a little bit more information, I don't mind playing it like that. And so I'm going to probably just check and fold here. He checks it behind, which is interesting. I'm going to bet. If he raises, I am just going to call. And now I'm actually going to just check fold. I'm not entirely sure what he has, but I'm just going to fold. Maybe he limped an ace high, maybe he limped a small pocket pair like 3s, or maybe I think if he had picked up a diamond draw, he would certainly raise. I don't think there's any hand that calls the turn that gives up on the river, unless it's sort of a blatant float play, which would be somewhat unusual. So I'm actually going to put in a call here. And the times that he does want to bluff, I'm going to make it expensive. And what that's going to do is it's really going to nullify the effectiveness of him leading out into me, because no longer is it a 1 small bet proposition, but very often it will be a 3 small bet proposition. So if I don't fold the flop that often on certain textures, what it basically does is it triples the cost of his bluff. So even if I'm drawing very short, it's something that I kind of have to do in order to keep him from getting a really big edge in certain textures. But at the same time, what's interesting about donk bluffing, or leading out as a bluff, is because it has to succeed so often. This is a situation where he either has a delayed river bluff or a delayed value raise with a 10, which I feel strong against, and can maybe re-raise, or a 4, which I think he would raise earlier, or pocket 8s, which I think he would raise earlier. So I'm actually going to re-raise and see if he pays me off. It might be a bit spewy, but I feel comfortable doing that. And I think he spiked an 8, personally. And he did. He had 8-jack. And so now I know that he's willing to continue to the river very lightly. I'm going to have to make a note of that and just make sure that I don't feel too shy about putting in the 3rd barrel here. I'm going to, so now that I've picked up the 8, I'm going to bet. I'm going to hopefully induce a raise. I don't induce a raise. I'm still going to value, but there's certainly no reason for me to believe that he has a hand. So it looks like he called and folded with a diamond, which I believe is pretty unusual for him. That wouldn't have been exactly what I expected. So I'm going to take my Jack 5 here, check raise. And now I'm going to bet. Last time he did this, he had an ace high sort of hand, I believe, and gave up. Now the ace is the worst card for me. I'm going to check. I'm certainly going to call a bet. It can occasionally be a bluff, and he did get the ace, but. So I flop a strong draw, and again, if my opponent check raises me, I have to consider that there are so many draws out there that I probably want to come over top. And it's very important to remember that if in limit hold'em, if you're bluffing, your bluff beats his bluff. So if there are a lot of draws on the board and you have a lot of equity, you may very much want to consider just coming over top and make sure you get the last bit on the river. And the easiest way to kind of get a kind of a feel for that, so I'm going to bet again, and then I'm going to have to. So he gets to the river with so many hands, I'm actually just going to check call. And occasionally I'll get off cheap against ace high. Obviously, I don't want to really be value betting there. Maybe something like a strong ace, I might consider something like AK ace queen. But in that situation, no, because I can get a cheap showdown from some hands. So I'm going to call here and raise the turn. And this is what I'm hoping to set up for. So now I'm going to raise. And I'm certainly going to call down. So now this is a question of he can have nines up. He can have maybe I can have a set of fours. So that's 6 combos for sets. I think you'd have. And then an equal amount of, I guess, 9s up and 8s up. He can also have 4 deuce, but I'm actually just going to call. And he does have 9s up. The easiest way to get a feel for whether or not you should be rebluffing is to learn to count combos and kind of figure out how heavily weighted different combos are. I'm going to just call. Sometimes I would check raise on a board like this, but I'm just going to just call. Now I'm going to lead and try and see if I can bet 3-bet actually off an ace. And that may also prevent him from checking behind with a hand like a 9, so it's somewhat a balanced play. I think he might have something like a queen-jack sort of hand, so I'm going to call. I might not be good here too often. He has king-jack. And on this texture, I'm going to check behind and see what the turn card is. The reason I'm doing this is because I think I've done the work in Poker Stove, and if he bets this river, I would call. I'm just going to check behind. I'm not going to value bet. Though it's not necessarily actually the worst proposition, is that on a board like that, your opponent will have a piece of it so settled that you don't win the pot for one small bet ever. So he checks behind again, and I'm just going to check it to him. He's never checked and folded. This is such a dry texture that I think if he had some sort of piece, he would bet. Both times that he's checked behind so far, he's had an ace-high, king-high sort of hand, so I'm not going to take a shot at that pot now that I have that information. So 3-6 I'll raise. I'll bet here, and I'm going to follow through here. If he raises, okay, well that makes it easier. If he raises on that board, it does kill some of my equity. I would be a bit happier if my 6 and my 5 were live. I'm going to make the pot bigger again and give myself a chance to win the flop outright. He's peeled very loosely, so I'm actually going to check and call a bet here. I have plenty of equity. I may even have as much as and now I'm going to fold. Most of the draws got there. And the next time